And so given this historical context and these issues facing West Oakland, what we like to advocate is for what we call community-led or community-controlled development. And what does that look like? So a lot of you are familiar with grassroots from the ground up type approaches. But sometimes what happens in these scenarios is, like planners, like I said, I come from a planning background. So we like to consider ourselves progressive in the planning field. So we want to do needs assessments. We want to work with the community to identify what are the issues that you are facing. But when it comes time for solutions, we usually turn around and leave the community. We're not interested in getting solutions because obviously I'm a planner, I have a master's degree, I'm highly educated, I can give you all the solutions that you need. But that's where traditional top-down development goes. And we want to advocate for an alternative to that, where we not only want to engage in what's affecting your community, but we want to help you identify the solutions and be a part of the solutions. Typically what happens in our communities, a perfect example could be this. Hey, we've spoken to the community, they've identified that they need a grocery store. So a city planner says, yeah, that's great. How do we get Safeway in here? How do we get those people to come in here? Maybe we can give them a whole bunch of land. Maybe we'll give them a 20-year tax subsidy. This sounds absurd, but this is how it happens. This is how the development process happens. So what we wanted to do was something different. We were invited into the community back in 2000. It was just a ragtag group of individuals from a collective of organizations that sat around the table and wanted to know, how do we create a food secure community in West Oakland? And so this is the question that we posed to some of the community members that sat with us in focus groups and whatnot. And they defined 5 areas that they wanted us to work on, or wanted to work on with us. Getting a farmer's market and supporting farmers, especially minority farmers, working around corner stores and the abundance of them, creating local businesses that were community owned. They needed a grocery store is what they said. That was one of their chief complaints. We don't have a grocery store. We need a grocery store. That was like one of their biggest complaints. And then the other thing, they said, we want more places to have open space. We want more parks. We want more places to take our children. And so we kind of took that and built it into the organizational framework of Mandela Marketplace, the nonprofit. Next slide, please. And so Mandela Marketplace is a nonprofit small business and community leadership incubator. Now what that looks like on the small business side is we incubate Mandela Foods, which James will talk about shortly. But we also have this thing that we have called an alternative produce distribution network. So that's on, and these are like projects sort of like what Gavin is talking about, creating revenue to help fund our social mission. We do get a lot of grant funding from the government and foundations, but it's to do work that helps us create businesses that can be self-sustaining, like Mandela Foods Cooperative. And in the future, we would also like to run our produce distribution network as a for-profit business that's cooperatively owned by people in the community. But right now, it's just a project of ours that we do as a nonprofit. Next slide, please. And so this is kind of what that looks like. So we get food from local farmers. We have a great guy by the name of Cesar Gonzalez. He's here. You'll see us kicking it later at the Leftist Lounge. You can come up and give him a pat on the back because he's a hardworking brother. And so he goes around, he forms relationships with our farmers. Like I said, we built that framework, those 5 areas into what we do at Mandela Marketplace. We've already established a farmer's market. We've done that. We're working on corner stores now. We have the grocery store open, it's community owned. So we are kind of like checking off what the community said and engaging them in that process. So we get it from the local farmers in about a 200-mile radius. We work with small farmers who otherwise wouldn't have access. Because what we have is a problem on both ends. We have 2 entities that are left out of the mainstream production or supply chain. So we have the minority farmers who, because of either they don't produce enough or there's language barriers. A lot of our farmers are Latino. They might have language barriers with the distributors or with the mainstream grocery stores, or it's flat out racism. We have some Asian farmers that just get discriminated against because they're first generation and people look down upon them. But for whatever reason, corporate grocery stores are not buying from our local farmers. They're buying from big old factory farms that don't really look like a farm. Like you buy the product and it's got like a nice green field on the back, knowing damn well that was produced in a factory-like setting. It wasn't produced on a farm with like a farmer and his wife and their dog. That's not what happened. There's a whole bunch of diesel fuel and a whole bunch of pesticides, men walking around looking like they're spraying radiation on stuff. I mean, this is what happens. And so on that end, you have our small farmers getting left out of this retail chain. And then you have a place like West Oakland, which Safeway does not want to come to West Oakland. We're out in the Midwest, so Meijer has no interest in being in Detroit, right? Right? Is there a Meijer in Detroit?
They're going to
After how many years?
yeah, I guess we know that. 1,000 years.
So, but the idea is that, and they've said repeatedly, we don't want to be in urban areas because it's high crime. People won't buy the things. These poor people aren't interested.
Our subway has bulletproof glass in it.
Yes. But so anyway, so you have these two populations that are left out by the mainstream corporate interest. Safeway has said that you couldn't pay us enough money to come into West Oakland. So even when a city like Oakland wants to bend over backwards, give them land, tax incentives, they still don't want to be there. They're not interested in that. They want to make the maximum amount of profit. And they say that these people don't have enough money to meet our profit needs. And so they're not there. And that's the gap and the void that we're looking to fill with an alternative produce distribution network. So, like I'm saying, it comes from our local farmers to our warehouse at Mandela Marketplace. Then it goes to a couple of different places. We do a senior market booth that's run by this guy over here in the corner, Yoro Chavez. So he takes produce to our seniors at North Oakland Senior Center and gives them a way to have access to affordable, organic, locally grown food. It also goes to 2 corner stores, which I'll talk about later. And then the chief client that we have right now is Mandela Foods Cooperative. So most of our produce goes to the food cooperative. And James can talk a little bit more about the food cooperative.